All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for joining today, man. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you have a lot going on with Regal Robot and as well as Tom Spina Designs. So, if you can, just for anybody who doesn't know, go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm
Sure thing.
sure for anybody who's living under a rock and doesn't know what Regal Robot is
Yeah,
yet.
there's
So,
probably a few people left. No, thank you very much. I appreciate you making some time to chat. You've been a good customer of ours and a very fun presence in our Facebook group, I must say, and you know, uh, probably one of our top customers in terms of like customer photography, which is always really cool. So thanks for that. And yeah,
for
for
sure.
anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Tom Spina. You could probably Google me at this point and find out anything you need to know. But I do everything from sculpting and effects work and film prop restoration and custom mannequins and all of that stuff with a wonderful team of about 20 people now in our New York studio. And they all make me look really good all the time. So I won't take all the credit. And that group, we've also now created Regal Robot, which goes back actually just a few weeks ago was our eighth public
8 years
anniversary as
already.
Regal Robot. Yeah, the company has just passed 9 years old because I was at it for a year before it went public. Imagine sitting on that,
For a whole
like,
year before you guys got
yeah,
started.
we had the license locked up and we had our start date was a year out and it gave us all this lead time and it was tough to sit on. But yeah, with Regal Robot, we've got the license with Lucasfilm and Disney to produce really, really faithful, authentic, beautifully crafted replicas and decor from Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And that's the stuff we grew up loving, and it's really cool to be able to do that for a living now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And of
Sure,
course,
man.
I appreciate you putting up with my spam in the group. So always great to hear.
No,
Um,
genuinely appreciate it. We love it. Are you kidding?
for sure.
By the way, wait, we're talking about
Yeah,
the Regal Robot Fan and Collector Showcase.
there you go.
So if you're on Facebook, go. Look, it's important to plug things. If you're on Facebook, go to the little search bar and just type in like Regal Robot Showcase or Regal Robot Fan Group. It'll come right up. Join the group. There's good contests. There's lots of behind the scenes content. We do some videos. We ask for questions and things like that. We sometimes answer questions. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and Steven's there, so like that's the important.
Every once in a while, Tom has to slip up and let some stuff go early too, so
That's true. Yeah,
we can
boy,
get the
that
hints.
keeps happening. I like,
I know.
whoops. I mean,
We're,
I'm working on it, but there are no promises that that might not happen again. So
I think Rob is working on keeping you on it, right? For sure.
right,
So
he's definitely not texting me like now, do it now, do it. Like that's definitely not happening. He's very concerned about it.
interesting.
Yeah.
Blink twice if
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I just start like blinking SOS,
I know.
yeah.
So real quick, before we kind of get into the topic for today, which is going to be the life-size, Tauntaun bus behind me, you can probably see it, just over half of it.
Yeah, yeah, you got to tell the other
Yeah, I
way.
know. I gotta move out of the way here. Before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about how y'all even got started with
Sure.
Regal Robot and Tom Spina Designs. Going
Uh,
back,
yeah.
what kind of even
How much
brought you
how
to
much time
think?
do we have? Yeah, it's broad strokes. Grew up making everything I could. Just a straight up maker as a kid. Drawing, flipbook animation, sculpting. A lot of like what I came to call taper mache, like
Mm,
taking cardboard and strips of cardboard or paper and taping them in layers to make different shapes out of them and things like that.
interesting.
um, and we've since used that a few times to do fit tests on things and to like get quick mock-ups of stuff. And it's like that's just become like a side technique. But yeah, just constantly making stuff. Eventually got into makeup effects and making monster makeups, monster masks, and really fell in love with the process of making monster masks. Was also into puppets the whole way along because the Muppet Show and all of that when I was a kid. And I got my first gig in the industry as an intern at Sesame Street for Henson.
Oh,
Um,
really?
Yeah, incredible experience, eye-opening and it's so funny. I only really rediscovered the importance of it, 30 years later, that it was my first exposure to people doing creative things for a living. And it gave me the wherewithal and um, kind of like, just the okay to try. Prior to
I
that,
see.
it was like, oh, you got to be a cop, you got to be an accountant, you got to be,
For
whatever it
sure.
was. Um, all
That kind of
stuff
opened
that,
your eyes a little bit to that. Oh, this could be a real job that I could do,
yeah.
right, and make money doing.
And it was like, it felt like that to me my whole
Hmm.
life. I mean, and genuinely, it's weird to, I encounter people all the time who are like, oh, I'm still not sure what I want to be when I grow up, and things like that. And that's hard for me to connect with, because like I genuinely, like, as far back as I can remember, knew the stuff that I wanted to do. And it was always just a question growing up, this like thing in the back of your head, and not even the back of my head, the thing in front of me, the voices of parents and teachers and advisors and guidance counselors and everything, the real job. And I'm like, but this is why I'm here. So like maybe this. And um, but I luckily also have a serious work ethic and a little bit of a head for entrepreneurship and things like that. And over the years, kind of, merged all of this stuff together. I worked in television for quite a while as a technical director. I had a switcher blowing up
Oh, okay.
Alderaan and things like that. Old school, like Grass Valley switchers, like,
Yeah,
and loved every minute of that too. Most minutes. And then,
most.
yeah, not quite the
Yeah.
same as working for yourself, but the whole time on the side, making monsters, learning how to sculpt, teaching myself to do things, building Tom Spina designs essentially in that time. And that coincided with the rise of not Skywalker, but prop auctions and places like Prop Store and prop dealers, things like ScreenUse.com that used to be around Desi's place and stuff. And it was this group of people that were buying costumes from movies and buying old foam latex appliances and creatures and puppets. And it turned out I had a knack for fixing that stuff, and I
Mm,
had the head for diving into the kind of archival side of things and trying to learn about conservation and how um, I knew how effects people approach this stuff, and I
yeah.
wanted to know how conservators approach this stuff. And what I found is that there wasn't a lot of overlap, and there weren't many people doing conservation that understood the material and the aggressiveness of it and how it deteriorates. And there weren't a lot of people doing effects work that understood the preservative side of this. They were great at the patchwork, they could make things look good, but they weren't taking the steps to keep it around. And so I really pushed into figuring stuff out, came up with some of my own techniques, uh, got very good, if I dare say so myself, at doing these kind of restorations. It really made a name for myself, and that became a thing that you could make a business out of, really. And it was unique, it was interesting, it was different, and you know there were how many other people out there that were making monster masks, especially back in the early 2000s. There was
Yeah.
the old HMA website, the Halloween Mask Association, and
Okay.
all of these other places where guys were just pumping out rubber monster masks. Super fun. I was part of that. But I didn't want to, I wasn't going to make my livelihood something that had both competition and the underlying fear of a cease and desist order shutting
Mm.
you down forever. So the restoration work grew. We were doing also, custom mannequins and things like that. I started to pull in friends and other artists that I knew that had different skill sets than mine that could expand what we were offering. And we started doing a lot of home theming for people because we realized like everybody loves the Disney parks, theme parks, and stuff like that. I certainly do anyway.
For sure.
And the idea of theming your space and bringing some of this stuff that you love into your life and living amongst the stuff you've dreamed about is not something people consider a possibility.
Yeah.
And, you know, For me, there was lots of things I thought weren't a possibility that were after a while. So we thought, why don't we make it a possibility? And that led to doing things like the Han Carbonite desk, and an asteroid coffee table and stuff like that. Probably sounding familiar to some folks who've been to our websites. And
Definitely.
the Han Carbonite desk went nuts online. And that really is the spark of Regal. That's where we said, we're not the only ones who think this is cool. And that was Richard Riley and myself that put that one together. And it was just one of these, like, there's something here. There's something that I've never seen done in a licensed space. And as Lucasfilm transitioned to the Disney ownership, it was just kind of one of these things where it was always in the back of my mind, like, we should talk about this with the licensing folks. All along the way, I did say this was the long version. No, this is the short version, believe it or not. But all along the way, we started doing creature masks and things like that for Lucasfilm, for commercials, whatever, for tour suits. We made them some Chewbacca suits to do at events and television commercials and things like that. We made them a ton of different aliens. And all of this sort of nexus happened where it was like, we're doing all of this work with these folks. We're helping out these folks on the appearance side. We got through to the right people in licensing, both at Lucasfilm and then eventually Disney, that understood what we saw. We put together a pretty good pitch too, I think. And that's where Regal began. And it's been a wild ride ever since.
Absolutely. I was wondering, I was going to ask you rather, how did you all land on Star Wars of all of the different, intellectual properties that you could pursue for you all to kind of just dive in, head first and go there?
For one, it's my number one. I mean, the first Star Wars in particular, the Cantina scene alone, for me, is like, it is this thing that keeps on giving.
It's like a mask haven, right?
What's that?
It's like a mask haven for all of the different creatures and stuff like that when you were a kid.
Like, it's just, you just look and and you've got this amazing conglomeration of artists who I'm, obsessed with quite a bit. So, you had Stuart Freeborn and his team, his son Graham, his wife Kay, Nick Maley as part of that, Robin Grantham, Chris Tucker, not the actor, the makeup artist who did the Elephant Man and stuff. Even Charlie E. Parker, who did some of the applications and stuff like that. Really great team, British team of, wonderful special effects artists and some like young rising stars like Nick Maley. That was one of his first, I think, on-screen makeup is the smoker at the bar, and he goes on to do Krull and Life Force and all of these other films, wonderful makeups, wonderful monsters. And you just, this is the start of that. He worked on Star Wars. He worked on Empire. And then on the US side, there's now these reshoots for the Cantina where they fill in the gaps with even more imaginative creatures. And you've got Rick Baker, my idol of idols. You had guys like Doug Beswick and Lane Liska, Rob Bottin, who everybody probably knows from The Thing and The Howling and Total Recall. Brilliant young makeup artist. Only like 17 or 18 at the time he was doing Star Wars. John Berg, one of my favorite people in the world now, after getting to know him the last 10 or 15 years. And I genuinely mean, like, one of my favorite people to like hang out with and talk with. And it's all just this shared passion. And of course, Phil Tippett in that group as well, making monsters. So that film, all those artists, all that art, all this material, it is I do these Cantina panels. They have me out as a guest on conventions and stuff.
I did see that. Yeah.
So
did they upload the second part already? I saw the first part.
They said they were gonna. They haven't yet. We'll see. It's kind of cool that they're doing that because there's a lot of people who can't get to the shows and see those. And definitely. Pablo and I put a lot of effort into like making those real deep. Those are deep dives. Yeah. But the fact that 50 years after they've made that, we can talk for 2 hours about the Cantina and still come up with new stuff every time we do one of those panels. I have to like edit out things every time we do one of those because of all the new things we've learned. It's incredible. And it's like, what better property to start with than Star Wars.
I see.
There's every once in a while we'll have someone at in the licensing sphere who worries maybe that like they look at some of our editions like, you're gonna like you might not be able to do this for long because you're gonna run out of ideas. We're like, are you kidding? Have
We
you
got 50
seen the
years.
board? Like we have ideas is one thing that we are not short on, and inspiration from Star Wars. I mean, OT, prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy, television series now. But even if you just went original trilogy, even if you just went original and prequel trilogy, we could be at this for decades and never get through all the stuff we'd want to do. So it's just the ideal place to start. And I think it also has,
It's a lasting fan base for sure.
A passionate fan base, one that will come with us on the ride into the deep dive stuff that we love to do. We are not right down the middle when it comes to what we're putting out as a licensee. We are unexpected when
Definitely.
it comes to our product releases. And I think there's a lot of licensees that probably are looking at what we're doing with a little bit of a like, huh?
What's going on?
Yeah. Do people want that? And we're counting on that because we're doing stuff that makes us excited. And I'm like, I know when I go to Star Wars Celebration, I know when I go to, Comic-Cons and I'm up there talking about this stuff that I have a room full of 1,000 people who are hanging on every word to find out like what actor played the hunchy back guy with the funny nose and the weird eyes that sits next to Chewbacca at the Cantina that you don't even see in the movie, but you see in like 2 behind the scenes pictures. And they want to know about that guy. And I'm like, that's our people. Like they're there.
I wanted to ask, so I guess what would you say is the moment where, I mean, you kind of touched it already, but was there one moment where you realized that there is a market for like this kind of ultra niche, kind of deep dive, deep cut things from Star Wars, and that you guys could make that a viable product to produce?
It's an interesting question. I think the closest I can come to that, we had done we started with Decor as our license, and then about a year in, Lucasfilm, much
Expanded
to
from there.
much to my great pleasure, um, said, you seem like you want to be doing monsters and things, and it's like, so they gave us replica artifacts and some life-size character and bust stuff. And if that door is moving over there, I don't have a ghost.
I was about to
have a
ask.
little kitten who's just a little over a year old, and she's behind the door with a spring toy right now. So,
I
or I'm using the Force.
That's better. As long as the Tauntaun and nothing starts to move in my background, I think we're good.
Right?
I was a little concerned when I first put it up, but I think it's solid.
Yeah. We'll start putting like one of those smoke generators to send smoke out the nostrils, like the ones on set. Where was I? We were
you were kind of talking about like if there was ever a moment where where you kind of knew that there was a market for this.
So
and
when
you talked
we
about how you started.
When we shifted to collectibles, we put out a life-size Chewbacca bust, the first edition, that kind of just had the collar and the head, and the Tauntaun maquette. The Tauntaun maquette was one of those things I always thought it's one of my favorite sculptures. The musculature of it, the shape of it, the uniqueness of the body, the plated like dinosaur like looking tail or dragon looking tail. It's like
a reptile almost. Like it has like little scale looking bumps on it.
Yeah, it looks armored or something. And there is a particular look to the head on that I really like. It's a little different than the final, but it's very close to same scale. Technically, it's the same clay because what Phil did is he molded the Tauntaun maquette and made copies of it to send to England to use when they were creating the life-size one. And then he took the clay from this oil-based clay that holds up through the molding process, at least the way he molded it, and he shaved all the fur, the sculpted fur off of it, trimmed down all the musculature so that he could put the hair pelts on top of it, and he resculpted the head. And if you notice, the life-size Tauntaun looks more like the maquette than the puppet. And if you look at the puppet, the head is a little more squished this way. And if you look at the maquette, it's a little taller. And if you look at the life-size one, it's the taller head. It's a little like anybody who's an old 1930s King Kong fan like myself knows. There's the long head King Kong and the short head King Kong. There were two different puppets because they were made by hand. They didn't have the same exact head sculpt, and you can really spot it when you look back and forth in the movie.
I'm gonna have to rewatch now.
It's totally, yeah. Even if you just look up online, long head King Kong, short head, you'll see it, and it's amazing. Once you see it, you're like, oh yeah.
Interesting.
But that first Tauntaun took a little while to catch on. It didn't sell out right away. We weren't expecting it. It was a large edition, 250 pieces. But we wanted to just have, this, like, we didn't want to have an empty website. So it was like, okay, let's put some on that'll last for a while we work up the rest of this line. The next one we did, I'm trying to remember if, I think Jabba was next. And that was the maquette version of Jabba, like the just right version.
I think wrong side. That there.
Yeah, there he is.
Somewhere there.
And the
I know.
and that we did with photogrammetry, where we you used photos to basically develop a three-dimensional file of it, and then hand kind of filled that in. And Tony Cipriano did an amazing job with that. And that sold reasonably well. Again, a little slowly. That was also offered at a really good price, much less than if we were doing it now, unfortunately.
Or aftermarket now, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was another big edition, 250 pieces. But both of those eventually sold out, and now they go crazy.
Yeah.
But the one that made me know it was going to work was Max Rebo. We had Star Wars Celebration coming up. Bib Fortuna was going to be our next one.
I did see
always
that.
just thought that was a really cool piece. But for Celebration, Lucasfilm wanted us to do some kind of exclusive. They were trying to expand the stuff that was going to be just at the show. And we were not planning for like Bib Fortuna to be a signature or anything. It was just going to be an edition of the maquette like the other two. And we said, well, if we're going to do this for the show, it's got to be something more fun. It's got to have a little broader appeal than, weird Bib Fortuna. So we said, we went through the others that we had looked at. Max Rebo was one of the first ones that we were we scanned when we started doing that. And we said, you know what? Let's try Max. And we said to Lucasfilm, like, what, could we make it a signature edition? Like, we know Phil. Maybe that'll make this a little more special for the show. And we did an edition of 83 pieces, assuming that because of the price and because of the fact that it was at a show where everybody was spending all their money on tons of stuff and paid to be there, that they'd sell pretty slow and all of that. Oops. We were very, very surprised at the reception to Max. And we had other exclusives at the show that did fine. And
Y'all had the magnets, right? Or was it a magnet? Or the little salacious type creatures?
So yeah, we did the
Something
salacious
like that?
crumbs. It was 3 Kowakian lizard monkeys on a thing doing the see no evil, hear no evil,
yeah.
and it was like the wise lizard monkeys statue. And those, I think we sold 400 of them at the show. It was great.
Oh shoot!
And then we had like some Walrus Man arms as an exclusive, and the Blue Harvest plaque as an exclusive.
Okay.
That one also sold pretty well. But Max, we had to limit it to 20 pieces a day because it was 4 days and we only had 83 to work with. And every morning we sold out within like 2 minutes of the show opening.
Y'all would have sold everything on the first day for sure.
See, it would have if we put it out there, but I'm like, I know those shows. I know there are people who are like, oh, I'm only here Friday. Oh, I'm only here Saturday. Like, I just wanted to give them a chance.
For sure.
But it was crazy. And it showed me like, oh, this is just like, this is, again, it's like weird Max Rebo. This is Max Rebo, the concept. It's not a statue of the character. It's not a plushie. It's not a toy. It's not a pop. This is an artifact of the production of the movie. This is for people who, like me, are as obsessed with how the movies got made as watching them themselves. And I'm going to have to go instruct this kitten. What are you doing over there? Sorry. Who's climbing the shelves.
Training phase, right?
Yeah. but this said to me like, okay, we're out there. They're there. We just got to bring them in, and let's build this and hope that they come. And they did. And it's we have now built a pretty amazing line of behind the scenes inspired and prop inspired life-size pieces, maquettes, concept work, all kinds of things. And it's been just incredible to put that together, and the reception of it just makes me so happy.
What's pretty amazing is that you guys have been able to bring kind of a wealth of knowledge from getting to talk to all of these people too, that you're really not getting anywhere else. Aside from, classic creatures or from Star Wars: The Jedi, there really hasn't been anything, of course the recent ILM documentaries, right? But there's not a lot of information on niche stuff like the maquettes, right? So
Yeah.
it's cool that you guys are kind of bringing that into more collectors' eyes and seeing that this is how these creatures came to be.
Well, yeah, and you're not gonna, in a mass audience documentary, you're not gonna have the same conversation. I guess it's like the difference between a news hit on the nightly news that's 2 minutes long versus a podcast chat with someone.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do that like podcast deep dive with these guys and get that deep cut, behind the scenes story, behind the story type information. And these are brilliant artists, which with thankfully good memories, and who had a good time, and thus kind of it imprinted on them. But yeah, anybody who's curious about this stuff can go to either the Regal Robot YouTube channel or the Tom Spina Designs YouTube channel for the longer versions of them. And there's chats with just legends that I can't believe I know and get to talk with, but to be able to have those conversations like I normally have with them for everyone to hear, like that's really what that grew out of. It's like every time I would talk to Phil, some little thing would come out. And I'm like, people need to know this. Like, would you do a video thing? And that, I think one of the first ones we did was I think me, John Berg, Phil Tippett, and Dennis Murin. And that's one of those.
The chess set creatures, right? Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's long and it's in depth and it's got great stories from all three of them and their thoughts on stuff and, what this means to them now, what it meant to them at the time, how it happened, all that stuff that we obsess over. And it's just, I just feel lucky to be able to facilitate some of that stuff and to get those stories out there because they deserve to be heard. And these are people who I feel don't get the spotlight that they deserve on a regular enough basis. So happy to, shine as much light as I can on them in the meantime.
Absolutely. So kind of getting into the I guess the Tauntaun or elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
I know I would tilt the camera up. You're going to see the mic and everything. So kind of getting into that, what even inspired y'all to think that, we can create a life-size Tauntaun and people are going to buy it and they're going to shove it on their walls? Because clearly there are a few.
Some sort of crazy hubris, I assume, I don't know. I knew enough people as a collector at that point that had stuff like that wanted stuff like that, would ask if that's stuff we could do. I'm even thinking now, years and years ago, this is like mid 90s, pre-special edition. There was a local toy and comic place that wanted some life-size stuff that I helped build for the shop. And it would be like, do you think he could make a Tusken Raider with his hands over his head holding a gaffy stick? And it'd be like, sure. And I got like some burlap and furring strips and some sticks and some paper and duct tape and whatever else. And like came back, 2 weeks later, here it is, and it was always just like, whatever he said, it was like, yeah, why not? And so there's an element of that. There's also just having gotten to restore some of the original Tauntauns, having gotten to see the one that's in the archive that was the one used in Jabba's palace, and obviously was from Empire as well. It was a puppet that was reused. Having these just great memories of the special effects, the SPFX Empire Strikes Back documentary, where they showed Luke on that sort of like sawhorse
Mm-hmm.
looking thing where the
Getting
puppet's in
knocked
front of
off,
him and the
like,
guy's in it with the two hands and he's trying to
yeah,
make the thing look good. And it's just like, you see the close-ups and you assume he's on this whole big beast. It's like, nope, it's just a head, like movie magic. And
that's all they got.
yeah, and I think the one thing that really struck me about the Tauntaun in particular was the size of it, the scale of it. Having, again, having gotten to see those originals and seeing that firsthand made me think like this is going to be worthwhile, and it's exactly the type of creature work that um, you know, I don't want to say like I excel at because I don't want to make
Yeah.
it sound all hoity-toity, but it's like this is my wheelhouse. It's like if you put me in front of something and you said, Tom, I need you to make, a werewolf, a tauntaun, and a wampa. I'm like,
Anything with fur.
great, yeah, come back next Tuesday. I'll have them all. Like that to me is like yes. So there was another benefit is that. Um, we had this. So you people who watch our live streams, or people in the group often hear us talk about the board, where Rob and I will throw ideas up and try and figure out where they're going to go. The Tauntaun was always swirling about the board, like the idea of a life-size bust, and we were just putting it into development when Lucasfilm reached out and they were working on the finale of one of the seasons of Mando, where they were going to introduce the idea of Book of Boba Fett with him coming in and blasting Bib Fortuna on the dais, and they were recreating all of Jabba's palace for Book of Boba Fett. And they were recreating the alcove where Han and Carbonite used to be, which has a Tauntaun head on the wall along with a Jerba. And they needed a shop that could create a Tauntaun and a Jerba. And I said, well, this is good timing. We literally were just about to do this. How about we kick that into high gear? We'll get you one, and then we'll take that, and that is now the foundation for the one that we do. So
I see.
to start that, we used a casting of a life-sized piece that came out of Stuart Freeborn's shop. The history of it's a little weird in terms of like they're not exactly sure how it was used. It looks to have been someone did the rough out of the sculpt and they pulled a snap mold off of it, like a waste mold, where they could make a plaster cast of it. My understanding is they then used that to pattern out the neck fur and stuff like that while somebody else was finishing the sculpt of the head and doing the molds necessary for the foam latex and the skins and stuff. But we had a casting of that. We were able to make a clay press of it. And while it wasn't super detailed, it was all the forms in the right place at the right size. Okay. And so between, I think it was Ricky Vitus, I had a bit of a hand in it. I might have been Maria or Sam, but I think they were mostly working on teeth and horns. But we refined that down. We basically, accurized it, so to speak. We went through all of these vintage photos, all these photos we had from the archives, all these photos we had from restorations and things like that. And we were able to detail this thing up just like the real one. And that's the foundation of the face. And that face really does trace back to the starting point of this casting from production. And from there, we finished that one up. It's got a different neck in Book of Boba Fett. In Jabba's palace in general, it's
the short neck, right? Or it's kind of long.
Wall. Yeah, okay. It's like it's doing that instead of the tall. So we did that one up for the show, and using those same molds, that's how we got the start for the ones that we do for our people. So really there's kind of like a double lineage thing happening. It is the same sculpt as the one from the Book of Boba Fett and Mando version of Jabba's palace, and it relates all the way back to the sculpt from 1980 Empire, which is just super cool. 78, 79 that would have been. Okay. So yeah, pretty cool in that regard. And then so that was the spark of why it had to, that's how it kind of jumped the line.
I see. It's not exactly as clear cut as, some of the maquettes that are still around. You guys can go in and photograph and 3D scan, but at the same time, it's kind of cool that y'all were able to have access to the original production materials, right, and be
Yeah,
able to
and you know,
incorporate that into creating an accurate replica.
I love when we can do that. And I mean, all of this is lineage in its own way. You know,
Yeah.
whether even when you're talking like Salacious Crumb, where we've got the original sculptor working on it, that's type
Oh
of
yeah.
lineage. You know, there's uh, there's something about it to me where when you're doing an artifact replica, to be able to do something, sure, there's times where things are just gone, right, or just not available for scanning or for molding or whatever,
Destroyed, whatever, lost.
destroyed, too fragile, not
Yeah.
available, you know, in a
Hmm.
locked away in a forever collection, never to be seen again. Like there's any number of
Also true.
reasons something is not available. But, you know, I love when our artifact replicas, you know, the stuff that we call the archive collection, that's all stuff that has that lineage that traces back to these originals. And sometimes in incredibly direct ways, sometimes a little more meandering, but to have that behind these pieces to me makes them more than just toys, more than statues. You know, these are history. These are, you know, authentic pieces that you're bringing into your home that are recreated in a way that is super faithful to how they were done. And, you know, hopefully as everybody opens these boxes up, they get that feeling that I get when I go to the archives and I pull something off the shelf or they put it in front of us to work on. And we're just like, oh my gosh, like that's it. That's the thing. I get that feeling like when we did our gaffy sticks, that's one where like
Same thing.
every time I pick it up, I'm like, this is how I feel when I hold the real one in the archives, which I understand is an insane thing to say, by the way. Like
To
Rob
hold
and I
the
every once in
real.
a while we'll do that. Yeah, it's like Rob and I are holding the gaffy stick. We're like, this feels just like the real thing, doesn't it? Like, yeah, like it's crazy we get to say that, right? Like we've been to the archives, we held the real thing like a lot. Yeah, I know, you know. Like,
See, be
oh,
honest, the reason y'all made the gaffy stick is because you picked up the real one and you wanted to pick it up and raise it over your heads, and they said you couldn't, so you had to make a
right. I
very
had to make
faithful replica
arms
so
to be
y'all can
able
do
to,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then we had to
yeah.
run the footage forward and backwards, you know.
I know, right? Is it just kind of looped
Oh, it's a
in
rock
the
and roll loop.
original?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting editing choice I didn't know about.
Yeah. I
Um,
guess they just didn't have enough tail on that shot, so they had to like loop it to extend it out for as long as they needed to get the rhythm they wanted there.
well, it's either that or they fly back to Tunisia, right? So
Right. Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
probably a good
It's like,
use of
get
money.
Peter Diamond on the phone. We need to get back to Tunisia. Stat.
So, do you consider the Tauntaun wall bust? Do you consider it more of a replica or more in the art and decor side?
That's replica
You
for
know?
sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
this is definitely under
especially with
replica.
that lineage. And it's funny because we do have lineage in our decor stuff too. The Grail tablet is a great
Oh yeah.
example of that. The Rancor Corbel has that. Um, there's a bunch of pieces I'm sure that I'm missing, but um, the it's I think because even though it could technically be wall decor,
Yeah.
um, when it's a character like that, when it's a creature like that, and it's finished in such a way where it just feels real, the way that those do, I think it is it pretty quickly cements it in that sort of like, you know, archive collection, replica collection. The you know, the licensing terms are collectibles and home, you know,
Oh,
essentially.
okay.
This, you know, pretty firmly falls into the
Yeah,
collectible side
collectible.
of things.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think well, something that's nice is that anything you'll do from the art and decor all the way to the replicas, I noticed that even though it's not necessarily replica for some of those other pieces, you
Yeah.
guys still try to be faithful to, the original
Thanks.
prop or whatever you're trying to replicate, and I think it's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I love pulling stuff out of the Star Wars universe to put it on your wall, on your desk, in your home, in some way that maybe you don't expect. And same with the indie universe. You know, that Grail tablet is the sort of piece that, you know, most people would think, you know, maybe that goes on a shelf, maybe it lays flat like in the movie. And I'm like, you know, nobody's looking at the back of this. What if we put some hangers in there and they can, you know, hang it on their wall? It's the perfect way to display it. It frees up your shelf for lots of other stuff that we're going to make. And, you know, there you go.
That's
Hashtag confirmed, by the
I would
way. You
say
know, we're
that's
just,
that's a good way to put it too.
Yeah. Yeah, we want people to have room for our stuff. That's
For sure.
actually kind of important. In fact, I need to make that Tauntaun smaller.
You guys are
Bring
working on
this
that
down.
that shelf, right? You guys talked about on another live stream. You're working on the Regal Robot
Oh yeah, yeah. The
maquette
shelving
shelf,
unit.
right? Yeah, perfect.
Oh gosh. Somewhere like Tiki Man is out there going, like confirmed the Regal Robot Shelf is coming. It's going to be all over the group tomorrow.
So, as far as the Tauntaun goes, were there any? Obviously, you're using original reference materials. A
Yeah,
lot of the photographs that maybe people don't have access to, right?
quite a few.
Is there any sort of things you discovered through that process of trying to replicate it for the show, and then obviously to sell as a product that maybe wasn't readily available?
The restoration work we did
Yeah.
really opened our eyes to most of what we needed to know about Tauntauns at that point, and that was a few years before. Um, there's I don't know that there's anything specific that our eyes were opened up to in that process, other than, and I will say this, that and the new Wampa, the wall bus, kind of is a good example of this. We built that the way we would build something for a show, not
Okay.
the way we would make something to be a repeatable product.
Mm,
And we haven't remastered that. We haven't done new molds. We haven't redone how we're doing anything on it, uh, even though we probably should, because each of those is so labor intensive, takes so much studio time. It's very it's a big, huge, challenging mold for the head. The head requires all kinds of hogging out and dremeling and stuff like that to get the eyes clear, to get the mouth clear, etc. The teeth and tongue and all upper palate are all put in by hand, and they have to be situated just right. And it's really challenging the way the inside of that is, because it's not engineered at all. It's done, like I said, like you would do it for a show. It's like, okay, we just got to get it done. Um, Same with the eye mounts, very tricky. The ears are separate; those have to get mounted. The head has to get mounted to the neck piece. The neck piece gets done in different materials. It's um, and oh gosh, just mounting the horns on that thing.
oh
I would
yeah.
love, like, if I had a time machine, I would go back and tell Tom, I was like, I know you've only got like 2 weeks to finish this before they need it on set, but just think about production like a little, think about reproducing this. Um, but it's part of what, it's reflected in the price. It's reflected in, it is for us, every one of those is a huge investment in time. And that's really what people pay for with our stuff. You
For
know,
sure.
um, there is no comparison to like, oh, well, that piece is $400, but it's only $20 worth of resin. Well, yes, but
Hmm.
resin itself doesn't magically turn into Max Rebo.
How long
You
did it
have to
take to
have,
paint, right, and
yeah,
sculpt, and right?
you have to have either a sculpt, or someone has to travel and scan,
Yeah.
and then that has to get refined, and that has to get output, and that has to get cleaned up, and that has to get molded, and then that mold has to get duplicated for production, and then you have to make, someone has to cast it and then pull it and clean it, and then it has to have a base, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, someone has to paint it. Someone has to hand wrap it in bubble wrap, and
Hmm.
someone has to make the foam cutout. Someone has to put that in a box and get the plaque and assemble the plaque and put that in the box. Like all of these things, it's all time. Every
Packaging.
single bit, yeah, every single piece of ours, it is time. And those tauntauns take a ton of time, but I like to think it's worth it, because every time they do a batch of them, they do them in batches of about 3 to 5 at a time, which I think is another, good thing for folks to know, because it's pretty easy to think, oh well, this should be a different price, or this is
Mm.
some mass produced item, like, because we're a licensee. I think everybody just assumes that,
You guys got
oh,
like
they
a
made 100 of those
robots.
content. They made 1,000 of those. Yeah, exactly. There's
Yeah.
some like robot army making 1,000 tauntauns that we definitely have room for. Um,
It is
but
in the name, right? So maybe that's why. It's because it's a
maybe,
Regal
yeah,
Robot.
yeah,
They think that you guys have a bunch of machines back there
right.
just making these things for you.
Yeah, yeah. Regal, not really robot. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of these things where when you have a studio, it's an art studio, and people are making 3 of something at once. That's not something where you get a ton of you know um, savings in that scaling.
I was
um,
gonna say that that's almost like you're commissioning, like a private commission kind of price,
Absolutely.
right? Now
Yeah.
y'all have the benefit of being able to do a few at a time, and obviously spread that out across all of your other stuff. But
Yeah.
um,
And we
yeah,
we approach these and the Chewbacca busts and the one-to-one Chewbacca statues. They are 100% considered individual commissions when we make them. Whereas the Wampa puppets were made to be a little more repeatable, still a ton of handwork, especially all the hair. Um, but and the paint on him is tricky. There's so many. He has so many teeth. Why,
how,
Phil?
how how
Why
did
so
y'all
many teeth?
even manage? You know, I was when I got the Wampa puppet out of the box.
Yeah.
I remember picking it up and kind of tilting it back a little bit, looking in the mouth. I'm like, how the hell did they even paint inside
Right.
there? It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't make
So
sense that we even did that. Like we probably could have just left that, black
yeah,
inside there or
black or
something.
something. I think
But
that's
no,
something that anybody else would do, right? But y'all are going the extra mile to kind of make sure it's as faithful to the original.
thank you. We spent a lot of time with that
Yeah.
original puppet. We got so up close and personal with it. I if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. If we're gonna, I know how I felt putting a boroscope into the mouth of the original puppet and finding little hidden molars and stuff in the back. I know how happy that made me. I know how cool I thought it was when I discovered his eyes weren't just black, that they had a reflective blue pupil and the orange, the sort of
Hmm.
amber haze around the outside. And I'm like, this is stuff we have to include because someone somewhere is going to get this thing, put it on a shelf, and be like, oh, that's amazing. And then they're going to come back 5 years later and go, like, the light's just hitting the eye differently. Is that blue? I never knew his eye was blue. And then they get a flashlight and they look in there and, and they're going to go like, oh my God, like, look at that. There's blue
It's
and
crazy.
black with the amber, like, and they're going to feel like I felt when I saw it on the original. And that's worth it.
Absolutely. With the, I think what struck me aside initially from the size, right? Because I don't think people realize how big some of these pieces are, especially the Tauntaun.
He's huge.
The Wampa, right? I could at least fit it through a standard door in the box.
Right.
FedEx showed up maybe about 9 o'clock in the morning,
Uh-huh.
and here it comes wheeling off this pallet. I'm like, what did I get myself into? Right? I get the measuring tape out, and you kind of vaguely see on the wall, do I have room, right?
Right.
And it's one thing, but then you see this massive box getting rolled out, and I couldn't get it in through the garage. There's kind of a small door, right? So I literally had to just cut it open and pull the whole thing out there. So what I will say is, whoever packages them, I know it took a very long time.
That's
I don't know how long
correct.
it took to wrap in that styrofoam,
Yeah.
but because it took me at least an hour to unwrap it myself, so I
Yeah,
can't
the bubble
imagine the
wrap and
wrapping
the foam and all of that, and then the strapping
for
and
sure.
the
It's very,
all the
very
pedicle.
secure.
So, generally speaking, that's Katie.
Oh, okay,
Um, so when she's not being the queen of customer service and handling people's emails and getting people's orders sorted out and getting things taken care of, uh, and coordinating so much, um, she will spend. Honestly, the better part of a day goes into palletizing and creating one of those up. And
I
and,
see.
and there's another thing people don't think about. Like, think about what you make at your job and what your boss probably has to pay on top of that just for overhead and everything, and just say like, oh, that's an entire person's whole day
Of
just
pay,
putting
right?
this in a box. Not to mention
It's
the cost
crazy.
of the box, not to mention the cost of the pallet
Yeah,
or the pickup or the shipping or the fact that we charge less for the shipping than it actually costs us considerably sometimes.
for sure.
Um, this is, all stuff that factors into how we price these things. Um, but it's ever so slightly too big to go FedEx ground.
Is
So
it the
that's why
is
it
it the
winds up
height
on the
or
pallet.
the? It's kind of the length of the neck, right? Or
A
a
little bit. I mean,
little bit
it's
both.
like it's always length plus girth on these
Oh, okay.
things. But the trick with him is the horns and the ears are so pronounced. Whereas the Wampa, the horns are tighter to him.
Yeah.
We were able to get a foam insert in there that protected him, and those shipped out great. But with him, by the time you made a box big enough to protect the horns, you had no room for any length anymore. It
Mm.
was like a 20, oh God, I think it was like a 30-inch cube box was necessary just for the head because he's like 26, 28 inches wide at the horns
Oh
already.
yeah,
And you need more than 2 inches on either side. So yeah, and once you're up that big, you very quickly wind up too big length plus girth for FedEx to take it. And honestly, there is a challenge with that too. We have found that when you do really giant boxes with FedEx or any of these services, and it's not to bash anyone, but they're big. They're not easy to handle. They tend to get bumped around more than
for sure.
an easier to manage box. And so, it's less risky to keep them on a pallet. It won't get turned upside down. We could strap them down. We know the back of them is super secure.
Yeah.
So that's the way we go with those. And it's definitely not the easy or the cheap way, but it gets them there safe. And we've had a lot of happy customers because of that. And we've had a lot of them that have done what you did, where they said, I had to unpack this on my lawn. My neighbors think I'm a crazy person, but thank you. He's amazing.
That's exactly how I felt, because for whatever, there was some kind of dents on the outside of my box when I got it. I was pretty concerned, right? And the FedEx driver would not leave until I opened it in front of him.
Nice.
So here I am, in my sandals and shorts at 9 o'clock in the
Hacking
morning.
away with
It
a
was my off
razor.
day.
Yeah.
I got all the straps undone. He was helping me pull out all this 30 pounds of paper, packing paper,
Yep.
right?
Sorry.
And then no, it was hilarious. The entire garage was full of paper.
Nice.
And then I finally get it, and he's like, "What the heck is that?" And so I had to try to explain, and eventually he just decided to walk off and get back in the truck. He's, have a nice
and
day,
does
man.
it look broken? No. All right. I'll see you later.
Pretty much, yeah. I signed the form, whatever, he left. But so that was a nice little morning chuckle that I got out of that. I'm like, he's gonna go home and, well, maybe he won't tell anybody, but I kind of have a slight feeling that maybe he's like, you won't believe what I saw at work today.
Yeah, we definitely get that. Like, the delivery people don't get past the lobby in our shop, but like, it's not unusual for the lobby to have like a hyper realistic wax figure sitting in one of the chairs, because we're like prepping that for something. And like, I remember we were doing job interviews with people for, I think it was a bookkeeper position years ago, and we had a life-size wax figure. It wasn't wax, it was silicone, but super realistic, hand-punched hair, the whole 9 yards, sitting in the chair. And it just looked like there was an old man sitting in the chair. And 201, people would come in and they'd be like, "Hi, is this place for the interview? Oh, excuse me, sir. Are you here for the interview?" And like, just sitting there, like,
I'm sure y'all got a kick out of that.
we really did. And yeah, so many times, like, delivery people come in and they're like, there's like a life-size Chewbacca in the lobby, or two of them. And they're just like, what do you do here? Like.
Definitely. I guess, is there anything relating to the Tauntaun itself? So
Yeah.
aside from the size, right? And it was a little bit of an ordeal getting the thing unboxed. But I remember the first section, I was carefully cutting away. The first section that I was able to pull off was right over the eye. And I remember I had to stop. I put the scissors down. I'm just staring at the eyeball on this thing, because it's huge and it's detailed.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, they're like the eyes are, I don't know about that big. Probably they're pretty large.
it felt like, I don't know if you've seen the Twilight Zone, but when I was unwrapping the thing, it felt like that one episode where they're unwrapping the lady because
Oh,
she's,
yeah.
with the
I have the
surgery, right?
holder.
Oh
Sure.
yeah, that one. There we go. Yeah, it felt like that
it
the
didn't
whole
work.
time.
She's
And
still ugly. Yeah.
no, but I opened it. I'm like, man, this thing's beautiful, right? So, how did you all manage to, I guess, get so much detail? Because I love the Wampa, right? But this has definitely supplanted this as my favorite of my life-size pieces.
Thank you.
And it's really, I guess I'm very curious how you all even managed to get so much detail into something like that.
I'm just gonna let you keep complimenting us. That's great.
Oh,
Keep
go
going.
for it.
No,
Yeah, we'll go for it.
And when you're doing something like this, our goal with this was to do a really faithful replica. The one slight variation in it is actually the eyes.
Okay.
The way the originals are done, the sizing and scaling is all the same.
Yeah.
But the actual iris on the original is a little lackluster. And for something that's going to hang on someone's wall that they're going to be able to stare at up close, sometimes original film props are not great. So we decided on this one being a bust and not, it is a replica, but it's not, the same as like these real one-to-one things. Said, let's put a little bit of extra life into the eyes. And it was, I had an old trick where I would do a sculpted iris basically. And it helps catch the paint. That was the one thing that actually does move the production along on this. And we put veins in it the same way you would like if you were making a custom eye for a movie and stuff like that. And and there are, if I'm remembering right, the originals do have veins in the eyes, and they do have that. It's just we basically just added a little more depth and a little more detail into the iris itself, the brown part of the eye. And we've had a lot of people respond to those in a good way, and I guess that makes me feel like that might have been the right choice. But it really is. It's like everything else. It's just, taking the time to do it right, making sure that our foundations are good, getting that sculpt super detailed and accurate and faithful. And when we do a sculpt on something like that, where it was off of a clay press, where you're, basically your hand recreating any of the missing detail, I always try to push it a little further, because when someone puts that on their wall and stares at it in a way that you don't get to do when it's passing quickly on a screen, where you don't realize that it's just a guy with his arms and something, you have to sell it. You have to make this look like what they thought they saw, not necessarily what they saw.
They actually saw.
Fur is another good example. Similar style, similar kinky curliness, not as ratty and patchy as the original is, actually. Some of
Still
the original. What's that?
It's been inside the hangar. It's not outside in the snow quite as much,
exactly.
right? Okay.
Yeah, some of the originals, they're made with actual like animal skins and stuff like that, and they're really patched together with like tons of different ones and different colors and directions, and we're like, we can capture the vibe of that and still give it tons of detail and layers. And like, I know fur, starting with days in puppets and then moving on to werewolves and all this other stuff, and then Cantina monsters and Chewbacca's and Wampas. Oh my. I love fur. I know a lot of techniques to make, not high-end custom animal fur look good and look lived in and look and that's the stuff. Like, I never like something to go out where it looks like a stuffed animal. And if you saw one of these before we do all of our fur treatments, if we just laid the raw fur on this guy, it would look like something out of like the Disney plush aisle. Like that's the way that fur kind of started. Yeah, it's poofy. And, so before the skins even go, the fur pieces even go on, they're all not real fur, by the way. They're not real skins. It's all acrylic and mod acrylic and stuff. But, it just looks like toy fur. And so we take it, we do our treatments to it. We do things like dye baths, and we do some other spray in treatments and some paint and things like that just age it and pull it together and give it like some coarseness and some roughness and some realism. There's usually two different types of fur on him as well, that gives some accentuation to the neck. And that's the sort of thing that I like to think sets us apart. If this was something where it was maybe a company who doesn't know the stuff as well, maybe doesn't come from an effects background, they would probably say, oh, well, we made a life-size Tauntaun. Here it is. We put the fur on it, and that's it. And the fur goes on, and it looks, just
stuffed animal on the wall, right?
Yeah. And then when you go into the deluxe model where it's got the rains and the snow and all of that, that just really takes it to the next level. And I always push. So I don't know, my favorite part of that whole thing, and this is a ridiculous place to like, the side of the neck. So
the profile view, like
it's not even that. It's literally, so in the movie, there's this particular way that the snow in Norway hit the sides of the neck of that real thing. And there's a particular type of matting down that happens in that hair. And so I have them, before we put the snow in, we do all our matting treatments and everything and get the sides of those neck good. And then I make sure when they're putting the snow effects on that they're dripping some directly down on the sides of those neck and letting it hit all the roughness and texture that we added into that fur. And it almost looks like cracked earth sometimes. Yeah. And to me, that is the crux of really matching the feel of Hoth, the feel of what you saw in that movie. It's that, it's sitting on the surface of the fur, and the fur moves a little, and it kind of, you get some fissures and stuff like that.
Like asymmetrical. right?
Yeah, very
Yeah.
asymmetrical, very random, and like that to me is one of the coolest things to look at when they finish a bunch of them. I don't know why, but that's always where I gravitate. Um, but yeah, some
Well,
people like
for
the eyes, whatever,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd say number one for me is probably that snow treatment that y'all have over the top of the horns on the top of the head.
Thanks.
Um, how do you all decide? I guess in taking some of those artistic liberties to make sure
Mhm.
it feels like something that's in the movie and
Yeah.
not necessarily exactly being what
Right.
somebody saw in the movie, right? Because I mean, even with stuff like theater, right? You try to be a little bit extra, and then
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
doing things for film, it's a little more subdued. You have the camera up in your face,
Right.
right? And then same thing when you're seeing something in person. I feel like sometimes it has to be a little bit, I guess, not overdone, but a little bit it's
Refined,
accentuated,
maybe.
right? Refined
Yeah.
so they can
Yeah.
see the things that they saw on screen.
We used to call it sculpting in HD, where
Okay.
it's like this is the standard definition version of it. We got to give them the HD version because they're going to get it home and stare at it in a way you can't do on screen or in an old behind the scenes photo that's this big in a magazine and all dots. Believe me, I've tried with the magnifying glass, like
See if you, it's
what's that
just
creature
dots.
behind Phil Tippett?
Yeah, little printing dots.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's just dots. Okay, okay. Or you get the one every once in a while you'd get an old magazine, you'd be like, oh my God, what is that? And you realize it's the picture on the next page showing through. It's like,
Bleeding through.
oh, son of a gun. Um, Generally speaking, our default setting is warts and all. Our default is make it the way the film prop looked.
Okay.
So for things like the Belloc staff, perhaps, is probably a good example of that. And they have a bunch of these in the shop today, so that's why it's on my mind. But for things like that, we're trying to make it look as much like the prop as possible. However, the original prop has some really rough patches in the plating. And some of those are defects that you can even see on screen if you know what you're looking for after seeing the real one.
I
But
see.
what would a customer say if they got that and they spent, 1,500 $1,700
Yeah.
on this signature edition staff with Paul Freeman's signature, one of only 100 pieces, and they get it and the plating looks like somebody's, it's kind of jacked up or something.
They might be
So we have
emailing
to make
Katie
those kind of
thinking
calls. Say again?
they might be emailing Katie saying it got chipped in shipping or something, right? Like
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
like
We
that.
definitely don't
Yeah,
want that. The original has a couple of little breaks in it. We did not want to include those.
for sure.
We fixed those. So that's a pretty easy call, I think.
Yeah.
On some of the other ones, it's trickier.
Yeah.
There's some stuff where being faithful to the original is maybe a help. There's
Hmm.
some like asymmetry in a sculpture, something
Yeah.
like the Tauntaun, not beautifying it, where it's a pretty chunky boogity sculpture, that head,
Hmm.
it's all over the place. The symmetry is nowhere to be found. The horns are very different if you look at them closely. But I'll tell you, this is a good one on the horns. So because we were doing it for the show, we detailed the horns a little more than some of the original horns are.
Mm.
There were a few different sets of horns. The detail varied on them. The one that we got to spend the most time with actually doesn't have a lot of lines carved into it.
Mm.
Most of what looks like those grooves is just highlight and shadow paint.
Oh, so it's not
So
actually like carved depth per se. They're literally just painted the
it's
detail
literally
on.
just like dark line, light line, dark line, light line. So
I
it
see.
looks like it's got grooves. And there's some, but it's not as many as you would think.
For sure.
And some of the other props in the film looked like they had more detail, but
Yeah.
not as much as ours has. So that was one of those areas where it was like, well, people think there's lines going the whole way. Even if it's just paint, it's going to be better for them to get one where it's not just paint.
For sure.
But again, that piece was, we tended to consider that more a bust than a,
Like a decor wall art piece,
I
right?
wouldn't
Yeah.
say decor, but it definitely
Yeah.
the idea of a character bust to
Yeah.
me, I think gives you a little more room for that sort of refinement than say something where we're doing the archive collection replica of it.
I see.
The other places where we'll vary will be in material. So like the Gamorrean axe that we do, is heavy and beautiful and beefy and looks like metal, and wood, but it's all solid resin. When the real prop is like balsa wood and hollow vac form
Mm.
plastic that feels like an old Halloween mask. Like you pick that axe up and it weighs almost nothing. And it's like if we did this, people would like they would
They'd
light
riot.
the end of it on fire like a torch and come get
Yeah.
us. You know?
I think,
So
especially when it comes to the axe, I heard or a few people were like, why not do it in real wood and real metal? And I
yeah.
think part of it, at
Oh
least
God, real
in my mind, right? Well, number one, that's straight up a weapon at that point, right?
yes. Yeah,
So there's
exactly.
that. The other part of it, I guess, it's a balancing act because if you made it exactly like the original, like you're
Right.
saying, they're going to be up in arms about this plastic piece of,
Yeah.
balsa wood, 14-ounce replica,
Right.
right? And then if you go all the way the other way, I mean, you couldn't really make it accurately because the
No.
original wasn't that way.
Yeah.
So, y'all chose to do the resin material or whatever y'all typically
Yeah,
cast in, right?
it's polyurethane resin on that, and it reinforced
Yeah.
because of the weight of that axe. But it's one of these things where if we thought about doing a resin axe blade, because a
Hmm.
metal axe blade is just right out. That would
There's no
weigh
way.
about
Yeah.
50 pounds or more if that was steel. Oh my god.
Yeah. Very
Um,
impractical.
so yeah, metal blade right out. Sorry, the
And you
original is
couldn't get
a
the
metal.
divots anyway, right? I mean, how
Yeah,
are you going to get the scratches and the paint and the divots exactly
exactly.
the same,
It's
right?
not going to match up everyone. The scratches won't be in the same place, all of that. Instead, we 3D scan that vac form thing. We capture all that detail. We capture all those defects that they put in on purpose, all the weathering and distressing. And that gets repeated when we do our resin cast. So it's great. When it came to the wood, we thought about actually, like, could we do this with a wood handle?
Mm.
And the reality was, if we did that, someone would have to hand carve each of them. It would add a ton of time to production. And there's no way that it would match every time because the original has knots in the wood in
Oh,
specific
yeah.
places. And the original has an end cap that's all hacked away that someone spent a lot of time making look roughed up. By doing it with the 3D scan and casting those in resin, we're able to repeat all of that detail, all the wood grain every time the same exact way as the real prop. It gets people a closer replica, even if we're having to change that material.
For sure.
And, luckily the folks at the shop, are great effects painters. They know how to make things look different, from the material they are. And I think they do a really good job making that look like wood and metal, so.
I would definitely concur on that. I got the camera out and I had it very close up, which I know, might make some people nervous, right? But
Yeah.
no,
Yep.
I had it very close up, and even then, it looks like wood grain, like all the way zoomed in, macro lens, all the way up in the end. Like you can hardly. I mean, there's really no way to tell that this isn't wood, other than the
We
weight. Besides
Thank
that,
you. Yeah, well, and it's funny because we get people all the time who are like, I'll see them like, "Oh, I just got this in from Regal and I'm putting it on the group," and it's like, "Here," like, okay, okay, back up,
back up a little bit.
like,
I've definitely been guilty of that, but I do appreciate all of the little intricacies of the paint. So sometimes that's why I'll show
I
different
thank
angles
you.
stuff.
Well, it is funny. Every once in a while, we'll get someone who zooms in on like an eyeball on a
Hmm.
maquette, and it's this big on the camera, this giant eyeball, and I'm looking at it, and all I'm seeing is minor flaws in the paint, and I'm going, "Oh wait, that eyeball is like 2.5 millimeters wide. This is the
Hmm.
tiniest little thing." It's like there. That's the way the brush strokes just are. If you zoom out to a normal level, this is going to look fine. But it's so yeah. Uh, um, I was not as worried when you got up close on the axe, so you're good.
For sure. No, it looks incredible.
Thank
And as far as a tauntaun, right? So if people wanted to know a little bit more about some of the backstory or the history, where can they go to find some of the
you.
information on not only where did this stuff come from?
Yeah,
Obviously, Phil Tippett made the maquettes, the
yeah.
concept. I think I have. Let me see. Here, I got this one here. How do you go from
Oh,
this, right?
yeah.
Was my
Which
first thought. How do
version too? He's got two different faces depending which side you look at.
yeah, like I'm wondering, how do you go from this
Yeah.
to that up there, right? Like
Phil is
I don't
a
know if you talked about it at
wildly,
all.
yeah, he is a wildly creative individual, and he has a great ability to not be sentimental about his
Mm,
designs. And just looking at that 4 pack of those early concept
yeah.
busts, And boy, talk about a unique thing to
Oh,
put out as a
yeah.
collectible. Like there's very few people who can even identify those things, let alone, I saw them at the archives. I saw two of them on one trip, and this is decade and a half
Years
ago.
ago.
But I go, oh my god, that's two of Phil's early Tauntauns. There's one picture I saw of it once, but in my brain I can like immediately call back this one photo with the four of them, and I'm like, do you guys have the other two? And I'm like poring over the shelves at this point. I'm like, where? Ooh, there's the one with the two faces, And I was like, ooh, look at this. So, and we found the fourth one. I was like, oh gosh, this is amazing. So, um, you can see from the four of those wildly different concepts. And then you go from there to the final look, which he had. So the one that we did in gray, the sort of 11 or 12-inch
Yeah.
one, is his final maquette
Okay.
before the final puppet sculpt. Prior to that, he did a very similar design, almost exactly the same, but smaller and a little skinnier.
Mm.
And that was his first draft of the final look. And that is actually still at the archives as well. It's broken, if I recall. It might be missing a few little bits because it was an oil clay that I don't think ever was,
Mm.
whereas the others were sculpey and baked. But it's really cool, and that one is, so, how he gets though from those heads to that,
That's
mad
crazy.
genius. Like
That's what I
that's
was wondering.
the only word for it. And then that the final one he got to the 12-inch one, he
Hmm.
sculpts that up. That becomes the reference point for the guys in the UK. And you have Stuart Freeborn's team working on that. You have Nick Maley working on the Tauntauns. Nick Maley's got it's the I believe it's That Yoda Guy is
Mm.
his setup on. I think he's got a Facebook page for that. He probably has a bunch of YouTube videos as well. He's
Okay.
definitely somebody to check out if you love this kind of info. Nick was probably the biggest source of information from Stuart Freeborn's team. And I even very luckily got to get a lot of information direct from
Mm.
Stuart and from Kay, his wife, as well. But prior to that and since, Nick has been so good about crediting people that went uncredited in the old head of department days. It would be normally a film would wrap and it would be like makeup effects by Stuart Freeborn. And it's like, yeah, but it was Stuart and six other people, but that was that's the only credit they were allowed for the makeup team. So they just did head of the department. So Nick was very good about saying, oh, Stuart's son Graham actually did this. And Chris Tucker worked on the Plutonian guy and Walrus Man and blah 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 down the line. So he's a huge resource for this. Definitely worth chasing him up and looking at videos and things he's done, interviews and whatnot. And yeah, so one of those little maquettes got sent over. They painted one up so it had stripes on it. I don't know if you've ever seen this
I don't
version.
think I've seen a photo of that one.
So it had a flesh tone plated tail. It had stripes. It had that bubbly butt too. That's one of my favorite things on that early sculpt. And when they did the life-size Tauntaun, I'm pretty sure the effects and art department were involved as well. My interpretation of it is that Freeborn's team did the heads and necks and probably the hands and feet, and art and effects probably built the full-size body for the two that had full bodies. So you had one that was like kind of the riding body and one that was the sort of dead body. And
yeah, I see what you mean. How did they come to the? What I always wondered is how did they decide like we need to have one with a broken horn? Do you think that they just broke it in production, or was this something that was planned ahead of time?
Pretty sure it's intentional. That's a very Phil thing to include backstory like that. If this guy has a scar, you'll look at him and go, oh, I wonder what happened to him. If this guy's missing a part of a horn, and it also helps identify Luke's and Han's Tauntauns a little bit as well.
I see.
They did make a removable horn on one of those puppets so that you could swap the horn out when they needed it to be Han's or Luke's character,
Oh, so there was one full size, and they just swapped the horn on him.
So there was one full size rideable,
Yeah.
puppet, rideable in that someone could sit on it, not that it could
Yeah.
actually go around.
Move or
They
anything.
also tried to make a man in suit costume with a dummy rider on it.
Mm.
And there's just a few frames of footage out there. I'm trying to think where they actually shared that originally. But it looks ridiculous, and it's very obvious why they abandoned that.
It's like the Rancor costume.
Yeah, worse,
So,
but yeah,
oh, really? Okay.
yeah. Oh, so bad. Because the rider's like flopping around.
Oh, I see. In the
It
snow.
was really bad. It's the sort of thing that if they did it now with the rigging and stuff that we
Mm-hmm.
have and all the things that have been developed and the fact that you could support things externally and erase the wires later,
Yeah.
it probably could have worked. But ultimately, stop motion was just the right move for
Way to
that.
go.
It gave them such an elegance and character that you weren't going to get with a guy in a suit for sure. And then there were individual head puppets that were made as well. I want to say there's either 3 or 4 total. There's one shot when they come in and when it's just before Han says, we'll have to go out on Tauntauns then.
Oh, yeah.
There's a panning shot that at the
Mhm.
start of that, and it's in like the Tauntaun paddock or whatever it's supposed to be.
Oh, there's
And you
some like
can
stables, right? Or something?
Yeah, so you can
Okay.
see one full-size Tauntaun in the back. In the foreground, you see a Tauntaun, and in your mind, it's a full one, but it's actually just a head and neck that someone's
Oh, okay.
puppeteering in the foreground. So you see that, and then it pans across, and then there's the dead ones on the floor in that shot, even though I don't know that we're seeing it. And then Hans is off on the side. So I'd have to relook at the shot to see if Hans on the side is actually the one from there and there's an edit, or if that's one panning shot and it's a trick. But either way, the initial version of that full-size one, there are photos where it has the tiger stripes and where it has the plated tail. And at some point, Lucas saw that and said, no, I don't like that. Give it a regular, give it a dinosaur tail or whatever it was.
Lizard or something, yeah.
Phil had a word for it. I think he said dinosaur tail because it's just more like a brontosaurus, just straight.
Mhm.
And so they just put fur over that. So the final life-size Tauntaun that's in the movie, if you were to look under the hair, he has the plated tail like Phil's original.
They just covered it up with fur.
Yeah, and they sprayed gray paint over the stripes. So there's even a hint of those stripes coming through sometimes in some behind-the-scenes photos.
Interesting.
If you can't tell, we've looked into some of this stuff
I
in
see.
the past.
This is the type of stuff you don't find just by going frame by frame on the movies. Like this
Right.
is a whole nother level of deep dive that you guys have to do.
Yeah,
For
a
sure.
little bit.
Cool. So if I can then, let me ask, what's your preferred version of the Tauntaun? I know you guys have a couple different options if you want to talk about the different ones that are available.
Yeah,
I know
I'll
there's
say
4,
this.
right?
What was that?
There's 4 different options? Or how many do you all have?
No,
for-
there's 2 options on the life.
2 options.
Yeah. So
Okay, on the
there
life size.
is what we call standard and deluxe. Standard is no snow, no rains, anything like that. It's just, and some people prefer that for the realism of like, oh, if I killed a Tauntaun and put him on my wall, he
It would
wouldn't
be-
still have snow on him.
Yeah.
But to me, the deluxe with the snow and rains, and I am not usually like an upsell guy. This is not because that costs more, because it's more work and that just balances out in the end.
For sure.
But I genuinely think that is a stunning look. And to me, it feels like it jumped off the screen in a way that the other one doesn't. Now, if you like the Jabba's Palace look, then no snow, no rains, great. And if you have that mindset of, well, in a real world, it wouldn't still have snow, great. You don't want to break the reality. Your room has a story. Terrific.
For sure.
What I would say is this: of all the ones we sold, and I don't know the number offhand, but it's a fair amount of them. A vast majority have been snow and rains.
Okay. Same way.
It is considerably more popular than the standard version. And there is something about that in this kind of collecting. Look, when you're in the more than a few $1,000 area, you want the better, the better. You want the best option you can get. It's worth that little extra investment. I'm not, this is not a sales pitch. I am a collector myself. I have bought numerous things that are high-end collectibles. I've bought original movie props and things like that. And I find you always get a longer lasting satisfaction when you get the best thing that's available to you. When it comes to screen use props, I see a lot of people who are just getting into it and they start buying $500 props
Mm.
instead of
Like one.
several $50,000 props.
Yeah,
And not everybody can drop that kind of
for
money,
sure.
but if you were going to spend that amount anyway, keep your powder dry.
Yeah,
Wait for the right thing to come along that's going to really move your heart, going to really make you happy every time you see it, and invest in that better thing. And in the long run, those usually hold up better anyway because they're rarer, they're fewer made, they're more special, and down the line somebody's going to go, and maybe that becomes a thing that sells better on the secondary market if you ever get rid of it, because maybe it's special enough that it just always lives on your wall and makes you happy every time you look at it.
for sure. I know this will be around for a long time.
Nice.
Hanging around. I will say, you come from the conservation space, right? So I think a concern of a lot of people, especially with high end, replicas, is this stuff gonna last, right? Because you look at how they were made for the movie, and
Right.
most of them are falling apart now, right? So,
Yeah.
and especially for things that are on the more expensive side, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have
Yeah.
to think about, how long am I going to be able to enjoy this, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you all bring some of your knowledge for the materials that do last, right? And that won't, have some of those same issues while still being faithful to the way that the original ones were produced?
Well, it's interesting because it goes back to that same question, I think, with the axe, where you have to take things that maybe are made of one material
Mm-hmm.
and convert them to a different material that will still give you the same look. It's like sometimes you get something where maybe the original piece was wax and you want to make it out of a translucent resin so that you get the same
Mm-hmm.
translucency as wax, but you get the longevity of resin. Or you have something that was made for a movie in a highly kicked, super deadened, flexible tin silicone that's going to turn to goo in 10 years. And we make it out of a high end, undeadened platinum silicone in 2 parts instead of 3. So you're not activating on this stuff at all times. There's no extra plasticizers. And so you have something that is going to hold up and last and give you the same exact look. And that's great for items where we need to do hand punched hair and stuff like that. In the case of the Tauntauns, they're made in an opaque material. Some of them were polyfoam, some of them had a thin
Mm.
resin skin, some of them were foam latex. Many of them were deteriorating in multiple ways or destroyed from either, maybe not the most thoughtful storage or just from use and abuse or just how these things, you know, were made where they maybe didn't have the support inside that they needed. So over time, the materials cave in on themselves under their own weight. Um, so our push is to make these in, where I say an opaque material, I think, okay, then I can do resin, I can do fiberglass.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of the Tauntaun, those are a rotocast resin initial pass, hand
Mm.
rotocast in the giant heavy mold. And from there, they get layers of fiberglass to reinforce that so it's not going to sag and heat or over time. And it's painted in the same way that we would paint it if it was foam latex. It's layers, it's washes and things in the grooves and stuff to make it look like it's fleshy. And you can make resin. Well, look, when you make an opaque material like foam look
Mm-hmm.
like skin, you can do the same thing with resin.
Yeah.
If you and these were made with glued on hair, so you can glue hair on resin just like you can on foam. And
Mm-hmm.
the good thing is, through all our research with working on these conservation parts pieces and things like that, we've learned about which glues are not going to turn yellow over time or turn brown
Mm.
over time, like the actual glue they used in the movie. So when we're doing these hair layups, we're doing them with stuff that's going to last and look good forever, or at least forever enough for
Yeah, for
our
sure.
lifetime anyway. And so yeah, it's always something that's in the back of our mind, and it's part of what we do with Regal is draw from the talent and experience of the team that we have And whether that's a particular talent, like maybe Christian, our 3D modeler, or someone like Pat, who's got a ton of experience with original prop restoration and bringing some of that knowledge to it, or Melissa, who's one of our best painters in the shop, and has, done these touch-up in-paint jobs on hundreds and hundreds of original film props, the most expensive, valuable, rare, one-of-a-kind things you've ever done. And she dives in, she's fearless, and does a freaking amazing job every time. These are the people that are painting these things. These are the people that are working on these things. And then we have, our sort of next generation of people that have grown now, working with them for a few years, being part of the Regal production team, who are constantly surrounded by original material, constantly learning about everything that's coming through and absorbing all this knowledge that we have, and, have taken us from when I go back, gosh, when Pat started with us, and Pat and Melissa started with me in 2011, Christine about a year later. They're all still with us. And, at the time it was like me and Pat and this one other guy named Mike. And then it was like me and Pat and Mike and Christine and her brother Steve for a while. And then like Maria was there, and it was like, and just slowly, and now it's 20 people. And it's just like, oh my God, how did this happen? Like, but luckily, I have these people that have been with us. When you're talking about 14 years of doing this stuff every day, being immersed in it, being on sets, being behind the scenes on things, meeting the people who made these things. And, when I say immersed in it, it's not like we have one movie prop in our shop at any given time. When we're doing restoration work, when we're doing display work on costumes, there's usually a pretty good number of things going. There have been times pre-Regal, there were times we were juggling like 40 to 50 projects at once with like 6 of us. So that was
insane.
Yeah. And we're still always juggling those kinds of numbers. It's now it's just a mix of like the Regal production and the TSD stuff. But so the amount of original film props that these people have been exposed to, you can't unsee it. You can't unlearn it. You can't, remove what's been absorbed like that. And there is a visual language to original film props that isn't the same as a replica prop, and it isn't the same as merchandise. It isn't the same as product. And that's what we try to infuse in everything we do, so that when people get it, they get that feeling like me at the archives, holding these real things, giggling like a kid, and trying to make sure nobody sees the big smile on my face.
I have to say, it's kind of refreshing to have a licensed replica company come out here and first of all, you and Rob are so interactive in the group, which is great, and that's kind of a personal touch that you guys have that I think is cool for as much or as little time as you might have. Right. It's great.
As we're doing this at almost midnight.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So definitely appreciate that. And I think that what everybody else appreciates too is that they know that when they're getting something from you all, it's going to last. You have a wealth of knowledge that is unlike pretty much any other company that I could think of out there in the replica space. And you guys are always faithful to the original. So you know just what you're getting when you hit order, right? So I think that's great.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
And it means a lot to us. I like to think that the interactivity extends very much to even, email and Katie and phone calls as needed and things like that, where, even Ross too, who does a lot of the day-to-day order shipping and things like that, there are real human beings behind every interaction. The only automated thing I think anyone gets is the initial receipt from the website when you make a purchase.
Order received. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything else. And even after you get that, and this from several orders, I assume.
Yeah, maybe one or two. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to get an email either from Katie, Ross, or Tracy that says, hey, thanks for your order. We're working on these now. They're going to ship in 2 to 3 weeks. And sure enough, that's when they ship. Or these are ready to ship and they'll go out tomorrow. Or these are shipping in Q2 of 2025. And that's what we hit. But, we make sure that there is a personal touch to everything we're doing. It is on purpose, and it's just something that is so important to me personally. I believe that, you know, when people are coming, I said before, I think I said the words, coming along for the ride with us.
Yeah.
That's what this feels like to me. Like I feel like sometimes I'm a tour guide bus driver or something, and on your left you'll see Nick Maley working on Tauntaun horns. We are using this as an opportunity to explore and learn about these props that have fascinated me since the movies came out. Going on 50 years. It's insane. It's it's genuinely hard to imagine. And yet, there's still more to learn. There's still more we're doing. And for me, it's like I am just this firm believer in good customer service and in staying in touch with people and making sure they know what's going on with your order. And if anybody ever feels like they're not getting an update, they just email us, and Katie will give you an update right away.
Sure.
Or if you're just nervous about something or curious about something, how it's going to ship or whatever, am I going to need to take this apart on my driveway while the FedEx driver looks at me? That kind of thing. Yeah, I'm just so grateful that the folks in the shop believe in that same dream and are committed the same way, dedicated to providing that kind of service and the one-on-one real human interaction with every order, whether it's a $20 magnet or a $20,000 life-size statue commission, or something even more expensive like one of these custom pieces,
the rooms or whatever y'all do, right?
Yeah. We try to give everybody that same treatment, and I'm just really grateful that you kind of acknowledge that and the interactivity and stuff. It means a lot.
No, it's definitely something that's immediately apparent. So if you've at all been curious if that's something that people, I guess, reciprocate, definitely is, I'd say, for most people.
Thanks.
So
yeah, thanks.
That's been great. It's been great chatting with you.
You too.
For anybody who wants to interact on the group, Regal Robot Fan and Collector Showcase.
That's it.
You'll see me spamming every other day, probably.
Every other, at least. Yeah.
You'll see Ian Thompson asking for a Manaman for the.
Once in a while. He likes a Manaman? Huh.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I didn't know. Yeah.
You know what I'm gonna do? Just at the end of this video, I'm gonna title it on that section on YouTube. I'll just put a Manaman ? So I can make his. He's going to be skipping through the video.
What you need is because you need the famous YouTube thumbnail. It's got to be a big picture of Manaman, giant font that says Manaman with a question mark, and you going like.
I know, and then it's an hour of Tauntauns.
That's it.
He'll be so catfished, right?
Perfect.
So thank you so much for joining. If anybody wants to know any more about the Tauntaun replica you guys offer, anything else from the archive collection, and any of the other work y'all do for Tom Spina Designs, where can they find you?
So regalrobot.com for any of the licensed stuff that we offer that you can, order today and bring home into your collections. Tom Spina Designs for more specialized services, restoration, sculpture, theming, that kind of stuff. And look up at Tom Spina Designs and at Regal Robot on whatever and all socials you have. Listen, I'll say this too. If you do like what we do and you don't follow us somewhere, follow us everywhere you can. Every one of those follows helps put us higher in the algorithm and in front of more people. It brings us, more fun things we can make. And the more folks that find us, the more cool things we're going to make that, you can take home too. So
absolutely
help spread the word for us. And if you are signed up for everything, just share it with your friends and definitely come to the group though. It is super fun. I know he spams it's like a lot, but it's worthwhile. It's a really fun place. There's great giveaways. There's a good one. Actually, I got about 12 minutes till we got to pick a winner for the Chronicles book giveaway too. So we'll announce that in the morning and cool. Good times, man.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for inviting me out to chat and my kitten over there who's just getting in the last minutes here of the podcast.
No, thank you so much, Tom, and hopefully we get to chat again sometime and we'll talk some more stuff.
Sounds great.
All right,
thanks Steve.
Man. Appreciate it.